Welcome on Africa 24 and thanks again for joining us for this session of our interviews. Today we'll be receiving Dr. Rita Bissoonauth. She's the head of mission of the African Union International Center for Girls and Women's Education in Africa. So Aspiration 6 of Agenda 2063 of the African Union calls for women-centered development. What policies align with this vision?
Education is key to women's empowerment. And without any education, our women cannot be empowered. Our women cannot be the leaders of tomorrow. Our leaders, they cannot be the leaders for the Africa we want. This is why the African Union International Center for Girls and Women's Education was set up in 2004 as a specialized institution of the African Union. We only became operational at the end of 2016, where our mandate is to empower our girls and women in the continent through education. And this is what we have been doing for the past 7 years. We work at different levels. We start at the very highest level, advocacy with the heads of states and government, with the ministers of education, of gender, of different sector. We'll try to make it as much as possible as a multi-sectoral approach. We work, of course, with our different ministries, with our development partners, but most importantly, we work with our youth. Youth constitute, as we know, 60% of our population, and we cannot forget them. It is important that they are engaged in the process of girls and women's empowerment. And this is what we do. They are today the ambassadors. They are the ones to take the message in the community about the importance of girls going to school, completing their education, and believing in themselves. This is the message that our youth take, and we call them our AU CIEFFA ambassadors.
So the Constitutive Act of the African Union recognizes the essential role a woman plays in inclusive development. African women contribute to 80% of agricultural production on the continent, for example. So what is the African Union doing to further enhance their contribution in multi-sectoral development in Africa?
We know that agriculture is very key, and this is why we are here during the summit in February 2022 to organize a side event on the theme of the year, which is based on nutrition, human capital. And our side event is based on how do we develop resilience in our African girls and women through nutrition and through education. It is very important for us to show this linkage that exists between nutrition. Nutrition is agriculture, it is a food chain. What we are going to show here is we are going to show the importance of homegrown school feeding, which is an African Union initiative.
So how do you guys intend doing that?
So we are having this side event here with ministers from different countries. It will be led by Sierra Leone, we have Senegal, with our development partners, and we want to show how school feeding, of not having had school feeding during the school closures of COVID, has impacted girls' education. When our schools, many of our schools have been closed for 2 years, girls have not had access to a meal, to a proper meal. What has happened? They have not gone to school. Many of them have been married off. When we say marry off, it means early pregnancy. Many girls have dropped out of school, and the ratio of girls dropping out of school is very high, very high. We can now say about maybe 20% of our population of girls have now dropped out of the school system, have not had access to continued learning. They have not had a proper meal. And this is why it is so important to link this aspect of agriculture, of homegrown school feeding. Agriculture, why do we call it homegrown school feeding? It is because we are using the local products in our continent and show the impact of school feeding on enrollment of girls, on completion of girls.
So what do you expect from the diaspora related to empowerment of women, African women?
Diaspora is very key. The African Union right now has, as we know, 5 regions, and that diaspora is our 6th region. We work very closely with our diaspora. We make sure that they are part of our meetings. We invite them to be consultants, to participate, because they have a lot to contribute. diaspora, and also I think what is very important is that diaspora want to contribute, and this is what makes it more impactful, and this is the way that we can lead the continent forward and make it more results oriented.
So the African Union's 2018-2028 Gender Equity and Women's Empowerment Strategy is continuing. After 4 years of implementation, what notable progress have you observed?
I think Africa has made a lot of progress. Especially I want to talk about school enrollment. The enrollment of our girls prior to COVID, I have to say, especially at primary levels, had reached very high levels, over 90% in many of our countries. And I think this is a very notable progress. We have seen also increased rates of enrollment at both secondary levels and higher education institutions. So these are very, very promising numbers that we can see. However, we know that COVID-19 has come and we might lose a lot of the gains that have been achieved in the past decades. So there is need for us to work together, put our hands together, work as a continent, work as a community, work as a family to make sure that the education of girls is not left behind, that we continue to advocate for girls' education, making sure that it is on the agenda, on the topmost of the agenda of our governments, of our 55 heads of states and government of the African Union.
So we observe a lot of gender-based violence now in Africa. Meanwhile, it contributes to about 8% of it reduces economic activities by 8%. So according to official data, measures are put in place to end it, but it remains insufficient. So how do we accelerate the fight against this type of violence in Africa?
I think what we have seen during these past 2 years is very sad. Gender-based violence has increased even further during this COVID. Schools were not there to provide the safety haven that it does. So what are we doing as the African Union International Center for Girls and Women's Education? We have launched our Africa Educates Her campaign, a campaign which was launched in September 2020, where we call on our African AU member states, where we call on development partners, where we call on youth to make pledges, to work towards ensuring that girls go to school. Because as I say, when they go to school, they are protected from gender-based violence. And up to now, we have received over 250 pledges, and we are working closely with some AU member states. Namibia is one of the countries which is now ready to lead this process, to make sure that they tell us what they are doing to make sure that the girl goes to school. As I said, during this COVID times, we have lost a lot of the momentum that we have gained. So it is important that we continue to work. And this Africa Educates Her campaign is really where we have seen our youth at their best. Our youth have gone in the community, are advocating with their communities, with traditional and religious leaders. What can they do to make sure that gender-based violence is reduced? What can they do that the girl continues her schooling? Some of our youth have even built schools in rural areas for our girls. So it is very important, as I said, that we work together in collaboration with the different stakeholders, with the different education actors, but also multi-sectoral approach to make sure that we do not speak of gender-based violence as being a detriment to education.
All right, to close this session, ma'am, Africa 24, our media channel, is so concerned, is aware about all of this, and we promote gender equality across the continent. So how do you think we can help to promote women empowerment of the African Union, women empowerment programs of the African Union?
We would love to partner with you, with Africa 24, and we are very happy to be here with you today. I think what is very important is that, for example, our Africa Educates Her campaign, we would like you to be able to air it, to tell all our viewers what is happening. We have a theme song for our Africa Educates Her campaign, and we'd be very happy if you could hear this song, which is I Am an African Girl, which is sung by 3 beautiful young artists, Afri from Uganda, Smarty from Burkina Faso and Ife from Nigeria, I Am an African Girl, which tells us the story, which tells us the dream that all our African girls have. They all want to be somebody. They do not want to be the wife of somebody. They want to be somebody on their own rights.
Thanks for following up this interview session. Stay on Africa 24 for more interviews.